The scale, the volume of prosthetics. On any given show, we may do one or two makeup. We do a whole sequence of makeups for Rings of Power. I think every race, apart from the Numenoreans and the humans, were the only ones that didn't have any prosthetic.
We did just over 1,500 orc makeups over the season. If we can pull this off, we can pull anything off.
Hi, I'm Gordon Brickell from Filmmaker U. At Filmmaker U, we create courses for film professionals to deepen and diversify your existing skill set. You can learn more at filmmakeru.com, or of course follow us on Instagram at filmmaker_u. Every week we interview a film professional to discuss their work, and this week I'm joined by makeup and visual effects team Sarah and Barrie Gower, who recently worked on Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power. Welcome to the show, guys.
Hi, how you doing?
Pretty good, thanks. I guess my first question for you is, how did you get involved?
We, funnily enough, we didn't do season one at all, but we were slightly involved in season one. We actually did live casts of the actors, some of the British actors, and it was during COVID, wasn't it? I think actually it was around about 2020, and we were taking molds of actors' heads here in London, and we were shipping them out to New Zealand for the team at Weta Workshop to model on their faces out there. But it wasn't until the show was making the move coming over to the UK that we then got a call from a lovely producer called Kate Hazel, who we were actually due to do another project with her about 2 years previous to that, and it never materialized. And she said, "Don't worry, I'll be in touch. We'll work on something again soon." And she just rang us out the blue and said, "Would you be interested in being involved with Rings of Power?" So that was it, really, wasn't it? We were really super excited to be asked and to become involved, and I think we knew it was going to be huge. It was when we started the pre-production on season two. Season one hadn't aired, so even without seeing the show, they were giving us various bits of reference and information and images and little bits of footage from season one, but we weren't quite aware of the scale of it. So it wasn't until we got involved that we were aware of how huge this show was going to be, really.
I sort of got into VFX by accident. I always had a technical interest in photography and especially as it relates to movie making. There's something magical about the ability to believe something is happening when it isn't. So I went as a live action producer into a company called Bob Abel and Associates. Then I would have to, have a meeting about how do we do this effect that's in this commercial, and I never got the straight answer I was looking for. I have camera knowledge, so it's like, since it's kind of ambiguous, why don't I just grab a camera and we'll try it out. You have to figure out what tells the story and use every trick in the book to solve your problem. I am Rob Legato, and this is my course on visual effects.
I would love to know what your working relationship is like, because Sarah, you've got a lot of visual effects background as a coordinator in various roles, and Barrie, you've done a lot of prosthetics and various makeup. So how do you tackle projects? What's the working relationship like, and the breakdown?
Well, we essentially say Barrie is in charge of design and quality control of all the makeups, and then I basically oversee the team and do all the organization. So it's making sure, it's the hiring of people. I do. How would you say it, Barrie?
I mean, it's kind of well, we're a bit of a combination of the two. It's like it's a fine line between artistic and academic, and I think we always liken it that Sarah's kind of like the brains of the outfit. What do we say? That you're the organ grinder, I'm the monkey. Usually, that's what we say. But I think what we're very lucky with that. Sarah and I met on a film years ago, about 17 years ago now, out in Budapest. So Sarah was part of the visual effects department at the time on the production, and I was hired by Sarah's boss at the time to do prosthetics on an actor. we met on that film, we got together, and then it was we came back to the UK. Sarah continued to work for visual effects facilities at the time, and I continued working for different prosthetic designers. And they got to a point, it's about 2009, 2010, we were like, we can start our own thing, start our own company, basically. So it was around about 2010 we set up our own company, and then it was a couple of years later was the first major project we got awarded, which was Game of Thrones, and it was season 4 of Game of Thrones. So season 3 was just airing, but we used both of our past experiences to organise the project, run the project, hire a team, and budget and schedule, and which is something I was not privy to at all, really, and that was very much Sarah's background.
I was going to say, I think equally, because obviously I come from a creative background as well, and I think we're both visually in tune. And so what that means is when on a shoot day, for example, if Barry's on a trailer applying a hero makeup, it means that I can be in the crowd tent overseeing all the crowd orcs and maintaining that level of work that we strive to achieve. So it's sort of, we can divide and conquer between the two of us and cover everything.
Barrie, you at one point had done some work, or you worked with Rick Baker at one point, and he's like a legend. So I'm wondering, what did you learn from him? What did you work with him on? What was that experience like?
I met Rick years and years ago at a makeup convention and showed him my portfolio, and he was really sweet. And then it was several years later he came over to the UK and we worked on the remake of The Wolfman, Joe Johnston Wolfman. So the department was run by himself and Dave and Lou Elsey, and it was like a huge coup for Rick to come to the UK and on this big makeup effects film. And I mean, pretty much the entire UK makeup effects industry went for an interview to get on this job because they all wanted to work with Rick, Dave, and Lou. So to get hired and get a role on that film was like, it was like I was a monster maker as a kid. I was a monster basically. I grew up reading Fangoria magazine and Gore Zone and Cinefex, and I idolized Rick Baker. So the opportunity to work for Rick on a project was second to none. He was so generous with his experience, and he gave me so many pointers with so many different things. I'm a little bit of a jack of all trades, so I'll sculpt, I can make molds, I can paint, I can do a bit of hair work, and then I'll do application as well. He helped me along the way on all the different processes pretty much. But one thing that I was roped into at one point is that we had these full body wolf suits, which we had legs and arms which had animal hair, yak hair, glued in sections to these pieces. And I'd never laid hair before in my life, and it's something I always wanted to learn how to do. So Rick taught me how to hand lay hair, and he gave me a couple of lessons, and it was just really frustrating because he would just lay this hair on super quick, get some hair gel, just dress, and it would just be the most beautiful, natural looking thing. And I was like, what's just happened? And then I'd be trying to meticulously do it, and he'd, no, not like that, and it's sort of readjusting. So it's something I learned on that project, which I've used an awful lot since then. But I'm always really grateful and proud to have worked with Rick on that. And we've met up with Rick a few times since, haven't we? And it's like since he retired and closed Cinovation. So it's an honor, and it's just there's something really lovely about the fact that we can call Rick a friend, and we've kept in touch over the years. So it's been incredible.
I have to ask then, if you're when you were young, you were a monster fan. What's your favorite monster?
Well, I mean, I actually grew up on the like the Ray Harryhausen movies as well. My dad, when I grew up in the north of England, my dad was a manager of a cinema, and they used to have like press screenings, and he used to take me along to the press screenings, and I'd meet various, there'd be actors there and people. But I always remember I met Ray Harryhausen when I was about 5.
Wow.
Sinbad and the Eye of the Tiger, and they just, I just remember that they had all these figures, these stop motion figures, and seeing a character called Trog, which had this horn, and he was like a Neanderthal sort of character, and just being in absolute awe of this character, thinking, I want to make monsters when I grow up. And but it wasn't really until years later that I realized that you could do this for a living. So it was the likes of Rick Baker and Rob Bottin that I really got into. I was a big fan of the work. I mean, I always cite American Werewolf in London is probably one of my favorite films. And John Carpenter's The Thing is probably, you know, equal headliner. It's like the makeup effects in both those films are they're still benchmarks, you know,
Yeah.
these standards. But I was a huge fan of Dick Smith and the makeups he did as well, you know, Amadeus and The Hunger, the aging makeups he did on David Bowie. So I'm just a fanboy at heart. So yeah, I think growing up, I was one of those annoying kids who I knew quite early what I wanted to do. So I've just been very fortunate to fall into it, I think.
What were some of the challenges on Rings of Power?
I think the scale and the volume of prosthetics. I think on any given show, we normally turn up and we may do 1 or 2 makeups, or we turn up and we do a whole, like a sequence of makeups. But for Rings of Power, I think every race, apart from the Numenorians and the humans, were the only ones that didn't have any prosthetics. So obviously we had all the elves had ears, the Harfoots had ears and feet. So we had the orcs, we had
Dwarfs,
Adar, we had, so it's every day on every unit there was some, you know, prosthetics happening. And I think it was just generating that volume. We only have a small workshop here in the UK, and having the logistics of that, because also it's not just a case of applying it, it's each person has a different sized ear and obviously a different skin tone. So prior to us applying the makeup, they'd have to go for an ear fitting. So we'd know ahead of the shoot day what number ear they would need. The same with the Harfoots. We'd have to do feet fittings with them, because obviously they all have feet. The dwarfs, they had nose fittings and ears. So and with the orcs, they all had bespoke lenses and teeth. So it's trying to organize all of that, and then on top of that, making sure we had enough crew. I think we had, in the end, we had about 100 prosthetic artists. Now, prosthetics in the UK is a very small industry, so it was hiring just, all the best people that we could get. And we brought people over from Canada, Spain,
all over Europe,
Italy, all over Europe as well. Just to try and have this level of quality that we're hoping to achieve. But I think keeping on top of that across 3 units, so one unit we could have elves, another unit was orcs, and it was I think that
definitely the biggest challenge. I mean, we've never had anything of that scale. I mean, just the orcs alone, it's I think over the season we did a tally, and we did just over 1,500 orc makeups over the season. But each of those, it's like all of those performers, we had these mix and match makeups and different sized sort of balaclavas and face appliances, chins, noses, what have you. We sculpted all these characters on different sized heads. So we would have fittings with, there was something like about maybe 60 to 80 people, supporting artists and stunt performers who played the hero orcs. And we had to measure all their heads, and we had to compare them to the size of the makeups we'd sculpted, so we could allocate, okay, that balaclava works for Jim, that balaclava works for him, and blah, 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 blah. We'll use this face. And so it would be, we could create multiple combinations of orc makeups from different sculptures, and then we would pre-artwork everything as well. But it was like a rubber factory, wasn't it? It's like huge in scale. We would say throughout the whole show, we would say, if we can pull this off, we can pull anything off. And I think that was the phrase we coined throughout, really. So to make it to the end, I think we were just grateful with, you know.
Yeah, and we were saying, in fact, we can't think of any other show, or in fact film, that's had this volume of prosthetics. It's something that's very, very unique, I think.
I think, well, we kept actually citing halfway through. The only thing we could think of which had the same number of performers wearing prosthetics at any given day was probably a Rick Baker project. It's probably How the Grinch Stole Christmas. Because the characters who played the Whoville characters with the noses, prosthetics, they had huge crowd scenes. So we probably had similar number of characters, but we had people who were significantly covered in prosthetics. They had full arm, sleeves, leggings as well. We had body appliances on some as well. And then we just had this plethora of noses, ears, feet. We had other characters called Barrow Whites. They had full head and shoulder and chest makeups. So it was a huge combination of, it was a logistical challenge.
I do appreciate that you didn't say nightmare. You decided to.
No, I mean, you know, we count our blessings every day as well, because we say to be actually doing this for a living, we always say we're just so passionate about it. And it is a lifestyle really for us. So it's never a nightmare. It's always a blessing, isn't it, I think?
No, because nowadays we're so steeped in visual effects and CGI and what have you. So where did your prosthetics end and you guys leaned on the visual effects team?
I think the scales were
the Barrow
Whites were the only.
I mean, we had so our main collaboration with visual effects were the Barrow White characters. I think was it episode 4, I think. And we had 5 characters which were initially going to be fully CGI. They were going to be completely digital. And we worked an awful lot with Jason Smith, VFX supervisor. And he's a big advocate of practical effects and digital effects. And as are we. And he said, I actually think we should have performers there on the night which are in practical makeups. And we should aim to create as much practically and shoot as much as we can on the night. And then we will aim to augment it in post-production to create these characters. And he was very upfront and honest and said, you know, they were going to be completely digital from the waist down. We will be putting layers of digital effects over the makeups as well, but we need a grounding and a foundation beneath it. So we worked closely with Jason. We did a lot of concept art. We tested them a couple of times. I remember we were doing a night shoot with like 60 orcs. And it was about 3 o'clock in the morning, and Jason came over to our filming unit, and we did a Barrow White's full makeup test in costume, and we were both getting really excited about it. And Jason and I just took these guys out in the sort of undergrowth outside in this woodland, and we were sort of pulling branches down, and we had some dry ice, and we were like trying to photograph them on our phones. And we were just like, again, we were just like a couple of like fanboys, and we were totally in our element, getting super excited about it. So that was probably the biggest crossover we had, wasn't it? I think. But it's I'd say the majority of our projects, because Sarah's from that visual effects background, we have a very strong relationship with VFX. So we've tended to do quite a lot of projects, haven't we, where it's been a combination of us and VFX. And I think that the best results nowadays are a combination of the two. So Rings of Power is an absolute pleasure to work with Jason. So it's a great experience.
Probably one of the smartest things I've ever done for my career. He gave me all the tools that I needed to be able to jump into a new career.
Getting myself into a mindset, thinking like an editor, and being around people that I can talk to on that level was really invaluable to me.
A lot of the things that I learned from that class, I still think about.
I loved the classroom. I loved the computer stations. We built a sense of community.
And it also instills a lot of confidence in you to take that and go out into the world.
After I took the class, I felt very prepared to take the next step.
I owe Manhattan Workshop the career that I have right now. Things have been going great, and I really have the Manhattan Workshop to thank for that.
What was the character that you had the most fun with creating?
The Barrow Whites were really good fun, actually, because we worked very closely with visual effects. we had a few hero orcs. Actually, Sam Hazelden's character Adar, he was a really fun character to design, because we were kind of inheriting this character from season 1, which was played by a different actor, and we needed to have a continuity of what was created in season 1, so you could see all the similarities. But we tried to refine the prosthetics, but we also had a bit of a combination of, it wasn't necessarily a likeness makeup to the previous performer, but we were accentuating some of Sam's actual anatomy as well, to give him slightly more angular features and what have you. And he was a really fun character to create. He was a wonderful actor as well, and he was very considerate of the process, and he really embodied the process. And there's a character called Gloog, who's one of the hero orcs, played by Robert Strange, who's Adar's henchman. He's sort of sidekick as such. And Robert, who played the character, is he's a wonderful, he's an incredible actor, but he's got an awful lot of experience as a creature performer. So he's played under kilos and kilos of rubber before in lots of big prosthetic heavy suits. But he's an incredible actor, and he knows how to act through prosthetic makeups, three-dimensional makeup, and he knows that you need to almost overemphasize a lot of your facial movement, and to actually get everything to read through the makeup. His character is really interesting because he had a lot of dialogue. He's a principal character, and we knew that his performance was going to be very significant. That we worked very timely in sort of taking the consideration of the thickness of the prosthetics, almost giving him a slightly more humanoid structure in a way to his face, so he could emote through it. There was sorrow, there was anger, there was aggression. Everything would come through the makeup. I'd say he was probably my favorite character, I think, of the season.
I have one last question for you. What would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure film or TV show to watch?
Well, so with our daughter, we've just finished. I've just finished Time Bandits. It's really good fun.
Yeah.
That was really good. We really enjoyed that. And what are we watching?
Well, we have a 13-year-old daughter, Lottie, and we're quite bad parents. We brought her up on so many creature films and horror films and what have you. So we've obviously watched American Werewolf in London with her and The Thing, but a film I love time and time again, which we've watched with Lottie, and she loved it as well, is because she loves Jeff Goldblum. Is the David Cronenberg's remake of The Fly. So it's probably one of my favorite films as well. So, but I'm very happy to put that on any time and watch, I think, The Fly. But it's interesting because we don't watch an awful lot of shows with prosthetics in necessarily, do we? Yeah. So we're huge fans of Succession, actually, on HBO. Love Succession, love White Lotus. Yeah.
We watch a lot of programs and films. We're big movie buffs.
Well, it's part of the job, right?
I know, we can't help ourselves.
What we do in the shadows as well.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Our daughter loves that. She loves Matt Berry. The fact that it's got some prosthetics and creatures in, but I think the actual humor in that as well.
Yeah.
We're all big fans of what we do in the shadows, aren't we?
That's really good. Yeah. Sorry, I forgot about that one.
Well, thank you so much for letting me interview you today.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thanks a lot for your time.
And that's it for this week, everyone. Make sure to check us out at filmmakeru.com or, of course, on Instagram at filmmaker_u. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.